outright hostility, their drama was epic. The conflict was not new. It was ancient. It stretched back for generations. Rome and Persia had fought before. The Byzantines were Rome's heirs. The Sassanians were Persia's heirs. So the old fight continued. It was a bitter inheritance, a cycle of war and temporary peace. Each side remembered past victories. Each side remembered past defeats. These memories fueled new wars. It was a deeply ingrained rivalry, almost a way of life for the border regions. What were they fighting over? Land, mostly. Key territories were always in dispute. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, it was fertile, it was strategic. Armenia, a mountainous kingdom, it acted as a buffer state. Both empires wanted to control it. The Caucasus region, with its vital mountain passes. These lands were prizes, worth fighting for, worth dying for. Control meant security. Control meant resources. Control meant prestige. Trade was another major reason for conflict. The Silk Road passed through these lands, a network of routes carrying precious goods, silk from China, spices from India, luxuries that both empires desired. Imagine fighting for decades, for centuries. Imagine the cost, the drain on resources, the loss of life. This was the reality for Byzantium and Persia. By the mid-6th century, both empires were tired, deeply tired. They had been at war, on and off, for so long. The latest round of fighting had been particularly brutal. Under Emperor Justinian I, under King Khosrow I. These were strong leaders, ambitious leaders, and they had pushed their empires hard. Think of the soldiers. Year after year they marched, they fought, they died. Far from home, families lost fathers, sons, husbands. Farms were neglected, villages were raided, the frontier regions lived in constant fear. The economic strain was immense. Wars are expensive, armies need pay, they need supplies, fortifications need to be built and repaired. All this cost gold, lots of gold. Treasuries were emptying, taxes were rising, the people suffered. This constant warfare was like a slow poison. It weakened both empires from within. While they focused on each other problems grew. Internal unrest. Then, something began to change. A shift in thinking. Perhaps it was the sheer exhaustion. Perhaps it was a moment of clarity. Leaders on both sides started to consider another way. A way out of the endless cycle of war, diplomacy, negotiation. Could they talk instead of fight? It was a radical idea for some. For others, it was a desperate necessity. The alternative was more of the same. More suffering. More waste. The specific events leading to peace talks were complex. There had been recent fighting in Lazica, a strategic region on the Black Sea coast. Modern-day Georgia. Both empires wanted it. The war there had dragged on. It was costly. It was difficult. Neither side could claim a clear victory. This stalemate in Lazica became a catalyst. It showed, once again, that military solutions were elusive and incredibly expensive. Maybe it was time to try something different. Key figures began to explore the possibility of peace. Envoys traveled back and forth. Secret messages were exchanged. These were dangerous missions. Trust was low. Suspicions were high. Each side feared being tricked. Each side feared showing weakness. But the potential prize was great. A chance to rest, a chance to rebuild. Section 5. Architects of Peace, Justinian and Khosrow. Two great rulers stood at the center of this moment. Emperor Justinian I of Byzantium, and King Khosrow I Anushirvan of Persia. They were adversaries. They had waged war against each other for years, but they were also pragmatists. They understood the limits of power. They understood the needs of their empires. Justinian was a man of immense ambition. He dreamed of restoring Rome's former glory. He had reconquered lands in North Africa, in Italy. These wars in the west were costly. He needed stability in the east. Khosrow I, known as Anushirvan, the immortal soul. He was one of Persia's greatest kings, a reformer, a builder, a patron of learning. He had also fought many wars. He had strengthened Persia's borders. He had centralized power. But he too faced challenges. Threats from Central Asian nomads. The need to consolidate his reforms. A lasting peace with Byzantium would free up resources. It would allow him to focus on other priorities. He was a formidable ruler, wise and ruthless. These two leaders never met in person. That was not how things were done. But their decisions shaped the treaty. Their willingness to compromise. Section 6. Forging the 50-year peace terms of the treaty. Finally, after long and difficult negotiations, an agreement was reached. In the year 561 AD, or perhaps early 562 AD, the sources vary slightly. It was called the 50-year peace, a remarkable achievement, 50 years. That was a lifetime in those days. It showed a real commitment, a real desire to end the fighting for a long time. The treaty had many parts, many clauses, each carefully worded, each addressing specific issues. One of the main points was territory, especially the disputed region of Lazica. It was agreed that Lazica would remain under Byzantine control. This was a win for Justinian, but it came at a price. Byzantium had to pay a large sum of gold to Persia. Some historians call it tribute, others call it a subsidy, or payment for defense of the Caucasus passes against northern barbarians. The wording was delicate, but money changed hands. Persia also agreed to withdraw its forces from Lazica. The treaty also established clear borders, or tried to. Borders were always a source of tension. The exact lines were defined. Fortifications were discussed. Section 7. A breath of respite. The treaty's immediate impact. The news of the treaty must have brought immense relief to people on both sides of the border. No more raids, no more sieges, no more constant fear. The soldiers could finally go home, or be redeployed to other fronts. The 50-year peace was not just a piece of paper. It meant a real change in daily life for many, a chance to breathe, a chance to rebuild shattered lives and communities. This was the immediate human impact. For the Byzantine Empire, the peace in the east was crucial. Emperor Justinian could now focus his attention elsewhere. He still had problems in Italy. The Balkans were under pressure from Avars and Slavs. His vast building program continued. Hagia Sophia stood as a testament to his reign. His legal reforms, the Corpus Juris Civilis, were being completed. These monumental achievements required resources, they required stability. The peace with Persia provided that. It was a strategic masterstroke for his later years. The Sassanid Empire also benefited greatly. King Khosrow I used the peace to strengthen his state. He continued his administrative reforms. He promoted agriculture and irrigation. Section 8. Shifting Sands, Long-Term Consequences and New Powers. The 50-year peace. It sounds impressive, and it was, but it did not last forever. 50 years is a long time in politics, but not so long in the grand sweep of history. The peace eventually broke down. Old rivalries resurfaced. New leaders came to power, leaders who were not so invested in the old treaty. Around 572 AD, war erupted again. And then, in the early 7th century, came the final, devastating conflict. A war to end all wars between Byzantium and Persia. This last great war was incredibly destructive, more so than many before. Persian armies reached the gates of Constantinople. Byzantine armies marched deep into Persia. Both empires threw everything they had into it. They fought to the point of utter exhaustion. By the time it ended around 628 AD, both were shadows of their former selves. Their treasuries were empty, their armies were depleted, their populations were weary, they had bled each other white. And this is where the Treaty of 561 AD has an unexpected legacy. The long peace it provided, followed by this ultimate ruinous war, created a unique situation, a power vacuum. The two giants that had dominated the Middle East for centuries were now severely weakened. Section 9. Lessons from the past, Diplomacy's enduring echo. So, what can we learn from this ancient treaty? This agreement made almost 1,500 years ago. The Treaty of 561 AD was a landmark, a serious attempt by two superpowers to choose diplomacy over endless war. It shows that even the bitterest enemies can find common ground. If the need is great enough, if the leaders are wise enough, or perhaps just tired enough. It reminds us that peace is possible, even in the darkest of times. But it also teaches us about the fragility of peace. Treaties are made by humans. They can be broken by humans. Circumstances change. New ambitions arise. The 50-year peace did not last its full term. The underlying rivalry was too deep, the desire for dominance too strong, yet for the decades it held, it brought benefits. It allowed for recovery, for development. It changed the course of history in ways the negotiators could never have imagined. The story of this treaty highlights the immense cost of perpetual conflict, the drain on lives, on resources, on the human spirit. Byzantium and Persia were mighty empires, but even they could not sustain warfare indefinitely. Their eventual exhaustion paved the way for new powers.